So, thank you so much for joining us. Another week, another fresh week. Shavua Tov, Good Tvach. And what better way to start our week than with the guidance and the clarity and the fire of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh and his teachings. So we're carrying on with Kesser Shem Tov. Over here we're up to Kesser Shem Tov Chaf Vav. Like I mentioned, we're not going to learn every single piece, but the pieces that are relevant for us in a very practical way, we're going to try to cover. And it just so happens that this directly follows what we did last week, was 23, 24, 25. So we're carrying on with Siyata Deshmaya Kesser with Chav Vav, Chav Zayin, and Chav Ches. And so the Tzaddik says in the very first piece over here, Mea Baal Shem Tov, again it's a likut, it's not a sefer that the Baal Shem Tov wrote. They collected the direct quotations of the Baal Shem Tov's teachings from the Sfarim of his primary Talmidim, the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, and the Maggid of Mizrich. And so they're bringing from the Baal Shem Tov, La Oilam Yikanes Adam Lebeis HaKnesses Shir Beis Psachim. The Gemara in Brachas tells us, very practical halacha, that when a person comes to daven, they should try as best as they can to move into the shul, not to congregate and to stand right by the door. A person should move in, and the Mefarshim explain over there, because it doesn't look so nice to tefillah that a person is hanging out right by the door. Kilu, they're 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and they're ready to continue kaparech mebeis hasefer, looking to quickly run out of shul. No, a person comes to daven, you should really, really move in as much as you can, settle in, so that a person doesn't daven in a rushed state of mind. That's al pi pshat. But the Zohar Kaddish that the Baal Shem Tov brings over here, and it's unclear exactly what the Baal Shem Tov is being mechadish, if the Zohar already said it, but he brings from the Zohar that comments, Shehem, these Beis Psachim, which literally means two entrance ways, is a reference to two access points to connecting to Hashem in a real way, which of course are the midos of Yira and Ahava. Or like we bring in Aramaic, which is part of the Shem Yichud, right, that many of us say, is B'dechilu u'rechimu. B'rechimu u'dechilu, right? Rechimu is love, dechilu is trembling, is fear, is awe. And so the Zohar Kaddish understands Chazal as not just telling you a practical halacha, which of course al pi pshat, that's what it means to move into the Beis Medrash, but it actually means that if a person wants to be yikanes adam lebeis haknesses, a person wants to approach davening as something more than simply reciting liturgy and checking shachris off the list so we don't feel guilty later in the day, but it's mamish supposed to be what it was meant to be. What is that? Shir Beis Psachim. There are two entranceways, and those are the midas of Yiras Hashem, which is awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence. We're going to learn more about in the third piece, and Ava, and tremendous love and connectivity and willingness to interface, to encounter the divine. B'Shem HaRamban, and here the Baal Shem Tov puts this teaching together with the teaching from the Ramban. It's a fairly well-known teaching. She'i efshar shia eila beis midas yachad, that anywhere else in life it is impossible for a person to feel these two feelings together as one. Ki im b'avodas habayre. Only when a person is serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because generally speaking, the things that we love, we don't fear. The things that we fear, we don't love. It's only when there's this multi-dimensional relationship that we have with Hashem, as Avinu, as Malkeinu, as Laman HaChai V'Rei, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is our friend, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi, Hashem is our beloved, etc., etc. All these different elements come together so that a person can sort of toggle between them in such a way where it's not either or, but eventually it's like a fluorescent light. It flickers, so quickly that it just becomes one. It becomes one miksha achazav, where a person enters into this very conscious and higher level relationship where we feel both of these things. We feel the awe and we feel the love, and one does not detract from the other. This is what the Ramban teaches in the context of serving Hashem, which is the deeper meaning to la'olam yikanis adam lebeis haknesses shir beis psachim. And that's the first teaching, a bit of a deeper way of understanding what Chazal are telling us in this Gemara in Brachas.
You said you didn't understand what the Baal Shem Tov is.
Right, I mean, he does. There doesn't seem to be any new chiddush. He's bringing a teaching from the Zohar, and he's appending to it a teaching from the Ramban. But these are already pre-existing ideas. Maybe there's chiddush and being mitzvah of them.
I'm wondering, because according to the Rambam, he just said that these two midas on their own, to come together only if you have Avodas Hashem. So maybe that's.
So you're saying he's finding a source in the Gemara for the Ramban.
If a person davens and he feels only Yira, and he's an amazing, excellent, or according to the Pshat of the Ramban, he hasn't really gone in Beis Psachim. the experience of davening should be that you have awe on one hand and love.
It's got to be
at the
both.
same
Yeah,
time.
yeah. It's also possible. As you were talking, I was thinking it's possible that he's finding a source for the Ramban in the Gemara, right? That it's lebeis hakneses is only in the context of tefillah of Avodas Hashem where you can find shir beis psachim. So that could also be the chiddush. Lo yodea. Okay, just another deeper element before we move on, though, is that al pi pnimius, those who are familiar, the whole foundation of Kabbalah, of Chassidus, because Chassidus is just a further iteration of the Kabbalistic revelation, is the system of the 10 Sephiros, right? Is the system of this, what's called the Seder Hishtalshalos, this system through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu emerges, so to speak, from his godliness, and step after step after step, layer after layer after layer, midah after midah after midah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu unfolds existence as we know it, until here we are at the end of that creative process. And the spheres are the blueprint for existence. Very quickly, we have Kesser, Chachma, and Bina. Kesser is visualized as being the center, the topmost sphera, and it relates to the will, to the motivation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to create the world. Chachma and Bina are generally visualized as Chachma being on the right side. That's the big picture vision on an intellectual, cognitive level, as it were, Kiviyachal for Hashem, to imagine the world. Bina is the thought process that deals with the specificity, with the details of the world. And then we come down to the final lower 7, which are more emotional midos, as it were. Chesed, which is the willingness to just create everything at once. But you can't do that, obviously. Gvura means, okay, it's the opposite, also on the left side. We'll withhold everything. Tiferes is the perfect balance between the two. Netzach and Hoid. Netzach is that the right amount is being given, but it's being given from the standpoint of it being beneficial only for the giver, but it overwhelms the receiver. Hoid is submissive, it's the opposite, right? It's where there's too much that's held back. Yisaid is the perfect amount of giving in the perfect way, and so there's a perfect balance between the two. And then finally, Malchus, which is the final sphere, the final midah, is the culmination of that process, right? Where the will, which is Kesser, which is Machshava Tchila, is concretized, is manifest within the Seif Masa, which is Malchus. And that's the concept in the Sefer Yetzirah of Seifa Na'utz B'Tchilasa. The beginning and the end are always bound together, are linked together. So from that perspective, if you see and understand the system of the Spheros as sort of almost a ladder, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kiviyachol climbs down, so to speak, to come down into a world that's created in the way that we perceive it, so then a ladder goes down, but a ladder also goes up. And so the tzaddikim understood these midos as being a kind of a ladder that a person can rise, can climb to get to higher experiences in spirituality, to higher experiences in tefillah and in dveikos and in Torah study and in life, in emunah. So from that perspective, the Mekubalim explain that the sphera of Malchus, which is the final sphera, is referred to in the Torah as the midah of Zos. Zos, right? Because all the spheros, the 9 spheros, are perceived to be masculine in terms of their being the mashpia. All of them are being mashpia elements until you come to Malchus, which is the ultimate mekabel, because there's no midah underneath. And that's the concept of the isha in the husband-wife relationship, at least as it relates to reproduction. Obviously, the male is being mashpia and the isha is being mekabel. And the first time you see the word zos in the Torah, it's related to the very first female. Tachava kimi ish lukacha zot, right? Zos is the feminine version of zeh, right? Which just means something. So the word Zos is always a reference to the sphere of Malchus. Based on this, the Mekubalim explain that this is a deeper way of understanding what the pasuk says about Aaron and all subsequent kohanim. Ki bezois yavei Aaron ela kodesh, right? Not just bezois, whatever is being referred to over there, but through the midah of zois. That's the way in, right? That's the first rung on the ladder to climb back up, because it's the final midah that we encounter, and that's a way to get in to this system that carries a person up, higher to deeper levels of spiritual engagement. Ki bezois yavei Aaron ela kodesh. And so that's the midah of Malchus. Now the midah of Malchus is most often related to din, to judgment. Even though Malchus is really the repository for all the different midas, that's why it's related to David HaMelech, who the Zohar Kadosh says is connected to eyes that have all the different colors, which is all the different midas, all the different spheres. David HaMelech is everything. David is a warrior, and he's a poet, and he's a singer, and he's a and he's a shepherd, and David is everything. And that's David HaMelech, which is obviously the kli for the midah of Malchus. As all of our Shiva Royim, our 7 shepherds, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, David, the 7 Ushpizin, are all receptacles for the lower 7 midos, from Chesed down to Malchus. So David is Malchus. Malchus is related to Yira. As the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, Il mali moira'a shel Malchus, if it wasn't for fear of the Malchus, Ishas chayre'ev bilanu, a person would just swallow the life of his friend. Nobody would be, at least in our current reality, obviously in a more mitukan reality, we wouldn't need the Malchus to prevent a person from killing somebody else. But Malchus is an element of Yira. Dina de Malchusa Dina, right? There's a Dina of Malchus. Malchus is associated with Din. From that perspective, Malchus is the midah of Din. Also, the concept of the Isha being Mekabel, right? Kabbalah, receiving something, is Din, because you're collate, you're withholding, you're taking that which was given, and you're keeping it. You're keeping it inside. That's Din, because that's severity, right? That's not Chesed. Chesed is hispashtus. Chesed is giving, and so the masculine is always connected with giving, with Chesed, with Mashpia. But the Isha, the aspect of Zois, Malchus is Din, it's a withholding. But the midah above Malchus, Yesod, is the ultimate channel, right? Yesod is a non-midah in the same way that Malchus is a non-midah, because Yesod just takes all the different energies of, let's start from the lower 7, so Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, and that's the building blocks. They all come down into Yesod, which in the human body manifests as the bris, right? So the bris isn't anything. The bris is a channel, takes all the different energies, and it channels it down into Malchus, which is the mate, right? Into Malchus, which is the place where the child is able to develop, and so on. And so Yesod is the ultimate mashpia. That's the midah of chesed. That's the midah of unbelievable chasadim, of hashpa, flowing forth all the shefa from above. And so al pi pnimius, on a deeper level, person's able to understand that the beis psachim that are being referred to here are these 2 openings, right? Is going in, and this is more directly aligned with the actual vision of what Chazal actually mean, al pi pshat, of beis psachim. You move in, right? You move into the beis medrash, 2 psachim. Al pi pnimius, it means you move up, right? A person enters into the spiritual realm through beis psachim, through Malchus, and then through Yesod, right? These are the beis psachim. This is bezois, yavai Aaron ala kodesh. Zois is Malchus, that's the midah of Din, and then one up is to access the midah of Yesod. And the ultimate avodas Hashem, like we say in all of our l'shem yichuds, is exactly that. L'shem yichud kudsha berichu, which is the mashpia, ushchinte, which is the receiver, as one. And that's avodas Hashem. That takes place within ourselves. Bezois yavei Aaron ala kodesh. Okay, so that's a little bit of a deeper understanding of Kesser Shem Tov Chav Vav. Let's take a look at the next section, Chav Zayin. Again, Me'abal Shem Tov, all these teachings are from the Tzaddik, from the Besht. Inyan milsa d'b'dichusa kodem alimud. The Gemara in Shabbos tells us that Rabbah, before he would start a shir, he would make a joke. He would make a joke, he would say something funny, silly, and everyone would laugh. The Gesundheit, the Gemara says, Ubatchi Rabbanan, all the rabbis, all the sages, the Rabbanan, Chazal would laugh, and then he would carry on giving the shir. What's the depth of that? Says the Heilig of Shem, Ki Achayis, Rotzav V'Shoiv. We learned last week that a Kadosh Baruch Hu creates the world in such a way where there are ups and downs, and that's going to be part of life, right? That's supposed to be. And that's how we build up more ruts and more cheshek, like we learned last time. Katnas v'gadlus, that is life. Sometimes we have more conscious experiences of connection and clarity, sometimes less so. Sometimes a person's in a good mood, sometimes less so. But through joy, we learned this 2 shiurim ago in our Shabbos shir, when we learned about ki b'simcha seitzeyu, doesn't just mean that we'll go out of galus and we'll be happy. With simcha, we'll get out of galus. Right? Simcha means that a person is able to get out of their small, constricted way of seeing things. And a person's besimcha means they're moichin the gadlus. It means that something was expanded. So through simcha umilsa debdichusa, making jokes, yoytze mekatnos the gadlus, a person is able to get themselves out of a state of smallness, constriction, pettiness, myopic way of seeing life, tunnel vision, and a person's able to come to godless. A person's able to stop taking themselves so seriously and other circumstances so seriously, and they recognize like there's what to laugh about in life. The whole thing's a bit of a joke, even though it's super serious, but it's also, there's a layer at which the whole thing is so absurd and bizarre that a person's able to break out of their smallness and see a bigger picture. We'll speak about that in more depth in a minute. Lilmaid, to begin to be able to learn, Uladavka Bayizbarach, and to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is the very beautiful Gemara in Tainis Chav Bezim and Aleph, where one of the Tanaim is walking in the shuk and he finds Eliyahu Hanavi, and he asks Eliyahu Hanavi, is there anybody who's a ben olam haba? You with your Ruach HaKodesh, you see everything, perfect 20/20 vision. Spiritually, is there anyone in this shuk that's a ben olam haba? And to his great surprise, Eliyahu Hanavi points out these two people. He goes over to them and he asks them, what do you guys do? And they answer that they are comedians, they're jesters, and they make people laugh. And when they see a person who's sad, they cheer him up. These two people are ben olam habas, the late sanim, but in a holy way. Bahani trained badchi, these two badchanim, these two comedians, mefakrin sar adam. They were lessening, lightening, loosening the pain of people. They milsa d'bdichusa, to this that they were going around making jokes, and they weren't such heavy people, and they weren't all the time sad and depressed and heavy, and they made jokes and they helped people out. Because through this you could be makar of a person. You bring them close to Avodas Hashem through milsa d'bdichusa. Again, I'm going to explain a little bit deeper in a minute. Let's just read what he says first. This is the deeper meaning of the pasuk. Unbelievable, this classic Baal Shem. Unbelievable deeper meaning of the pasuk that doesn't again seem to have so much relevance for our life. Okay, the Torah is telling us part of the Akedah narrative that Avram Avinu took the two Na'arim, he took Eliezer and Yishmael, and they went along with Yitzchak and they carried on to the Akedah. Says the Baal Shem Tov, we have to know how to read psukim al pi pnimius HaTorah. What we're saying over here is that Shnei Na'arav means that all of us have the years of our youth. We have the years that we were in Katnos. Some of us may still be in the years of our youth. Many of us sometimes oscillate between youth and adulthood in different ways, and that's also normal and okay. But there's the shnas neurim, which are looked at as being filled with mistakes that were made as the result of just not having been conscious. And I think that's true to a degree in all of our lives, that now we're mavakshei Hashem, but it didn't maybe always used to be that way. So there are the years of the past. Says the Baal Shem, you want to be a person that's vayikach hashnei na'arav imai. You want to be able to take the years with you that those weren't to waste? The answer is V'es Yitzchak b'nai. Learn how to laugh a little bit, because Yitzchak means tzchok, is laughter. So a person who's able to connect to that realm of laughter, and I'm going to explain a little bit more what I mean in a minute, what he means, I think. Through a person making what's called milsa d'bdichusa in Breslov. It's a very big idea, obviously, for people to be silly, and not take themselves seriously, and the whole time making jokes. And if anybody knows Joey Newcomb, so he's this world's master of milsa d'bdichusa. The whole thing is this nekuda. So then, in a certain deep way, if the years of Narus seem to have been sort of blemished because of its childish nature, so Adarabah, there's another way of understanding it. The Baal Shem Tov is saying, discover Narus, like Narishkeit, but in a holy way, and in that sense, you could also elevate, a person's Narishkeit with still what would appear to be Katna, says the Rebbe, is actually the greatest godless in the world if a person knows how to channel it properly. But I want to just mention before we move into the last piece a deeper understanding of this. And the Indian is like this. What's the Indian of a joke? The Indian of a joke, we sometimes have to look at the negative of something to understand the positive of something. And for this, we have to look at the pasuk in Koheles and the Medrash that comments. The pasuk says, "Leitz take upesi yarim." A leitz needs to be hit, needs to be beaten, whatever this means. Excuse me, upesi, and a fool yarim. The fool will grow wise, like arum. The fool will grow wise, but the leitz there's no hope for. Says the Medrash, who's the leitz? The Medrash says the leitz is Amalek. The leitz is Amalek, and the pesi is Yisrael. Because these two entities show up in the Torah around the same time, and they have very different stories, right? Amalek is destroyed, right? And Yisrael is a pesi, but Yisrael is a seeker. Yisrael is Yarim. And the Ishbitzer, without getting into the whole thing now because there's a longer Indian, but the Ishbitzer says very, very clearly, he says, I'd much rather a person who's looking for every religion in the world than a person who's a cynic, who's not looking for anything. Because the person who's seeking, he'll fall into kol minei shtusim, but he's a seeker. There's life, and there's something there. The person believes that there's something out there. That's Yisro. Yisro was a seeker. He served all Avodah Zarahs, but at the end of the day, he came close. But a person who's a cynic, it's the biggest klipa of all. Because a person will put up a shield, like the Mesilas Yesharim tells us, right? Leitzanis is like an oiled shield. Nothing will go through. And so sometimes, it's good for parents to know if they have a child that's struggling, but all the while that they're still like hayos, there's life in them, so you can channel that. The worst thing is nebuch, if a kid just loses touch with everything and and rejects everything and is just mamish depressed, and that's very, very difficult. That's a big klipa, So that's the Indian really of Amalek. Amalek is the lates. I heard from my Rebbe of Tzvi Cheshen Shlita. What does it mean that Amalek is the lates? So he says, think about it. What's a joke? So there are many different kinds of humor, but generally speaking, a joke means that a person tells a narrative that seems to be going one way, and then somewhere in the middle, there's a twist. Somewhere in the middle, that's what they call a punchline, right? Because it hits you. It's not what we were expecting. It shocks you. It jolts you. It's something that you weren't expecting. That twist, and that's mamish what Amalek is. Klal Yisrael are going from Mitzrayim to Har Sinai. They have a derech, right? They have a path where things are supposed to follow a very rational process. Or HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes Goy mitoich Goy, one nation from another. HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes Am Yisrael out, B'nai B'chai Yisrael, and he's bringing them to Har Sinai to supercharge them with a mission so that they could then raise and lift the whole entire world throughout history, especially the culmination of history. And here comes Amalek and makes a joke. Asher karcha ba'derech. Along the way that we thought there was a narrative that was progressing, Amalek says, well, actually, no. Actually, there's going to be something else happening now. Asher karcha ba'derech, we're going to interrupt you, push you off course, and change the trajectory because you thought things were going one way, and Amalek comes in as the lates and makes a joke. And the greatest joke, de kedusha, so to speak, is after it appears that Amalek and his narrative has prevailed, that Mamish, the Jewish nation, has not accomplished what they were sent to accomplish, and that all of history seems to be progressing further and further and further away from Elokim, and it doesn't seem like things are getting better. In fact, it seems like things are getting much, much worse all the time. The greatest joke to Kedusha is when all of a sudden Mashiach comes. And all of a sudden, the trajectory that then became Al Amalek seems to be what, the natural course of things, but everything is flipped, everything is turned around. Avoinas nasil schuya. It's like everything is turned. V'nahapachu is the greatest joke. That's like Purim is the festival of joking. It's the festival of Jews. The whole thing is a joke, and that's the joke that we play on Amalek. Who tried to play a joke on us is v'nahapachu. Everything flips, and that's the inyan of Az Yimale Schaik Pinu. That at the end, the whole thing is a joke. I like to say, the end of history is not the finish line; it's the punchline. The end of history is the punchline. When the great Gilu is revealed, and we say Vatischak liyom acharin. At the end, there's a big joke. So that means to say that jokes mean hope. It means that there's still a way that the narrative can change, right? That everything seems to be going in one direction, but it can actually begin to turn. It can actually go somewhere very different. And that's the inyan of hope. And that's why I think I'll be panimius, milsa dibdichusa is opening a person's mind. Because what does it mean for a person to fall into katnos? To fall into katnos means that a person doesn't believe, they lose hope, right? A person falls into just stuckness. That's what katnos means. It's the inability to move. It's gullus, mamish gullus. A person can never find their way back home. Person loses hope. That's Amalek, asher karcha baderech, cools us off along the way. You'll never get there. And milsa dibdichusa takes a person into moichin the godless because it's the side of emunah. It takes the letters Ketz Chai, which is Yitzchak, Ketz Chai, which means there's an end, and it turns it into Yitzchak. Ketz Chai into Yitzchak. Where actually, no, that's not the end. And actually there's something else. And I think that's also what it means. I'll be pnimius, what the Baal Shem is saying over here, the aspect of the Shneina Arav Imai. Why does a person feel like the years of their youth, with all the mistakes that were made, can't come along with a person into Avodas Hashem? Because they seem to be unable to be rectified. Right? It seems that those years and those mistakes and those experiences are just stuck where they are, and halavai, that a person would have had enough das not to make those mistakes and not to go into those shtuyot and not to waste that time, etc. But says the Rebbe, from the standpoint of Yitzchak, a person is able to look back and recognize, like, the great joke is that is also part of the narrative. That is also part of the story. And in order to get to that end, right, which is Vatischak liyom acharein, az yamalit schaik pinul shenenurina, is to recognize that it was all part of this trajectory getting us to where we needed to go. And that's a very beautiful teaching from the Baal Shem. Let's power through with the 5 minutes left to the next piece. Me'ah Baal Shem Tov. Ki yirach hitzaynis habal la'adam. Yirach hitzaynis, a person is afraid of something. A person's experiencing panic, fear, anxiety. Hu yad yamina yizbarach pshuta. He says this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's great chesed. She is oirera adam izeh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to help a person awaken liyira pnimis. That it shouldn't just be that a person's in a matzah where they get afraid of a certain thing. It's supposed to awaken a person to the realization that, wow, I'm so vulnerable, I'm so fragile. There's so much more to life than what's in my control, and that should wake a person up to what they should really have yira from, which is not the phobia of flying, let's say, or phobia of dogs, or for whatever it is. People have phobias, but it's much deeper. It means hayos, that this is out of my control, gewalt. It's all out of my control, and that takes a person to realize, yeah, it's out of my control, but it's in his control, and that's a very beautiful thing indeed. That's called Yirah Shamayim. That's the awareness that there's Hashem who's running the world. Because when a person's in a situation that they become afraid, the classic example of this, which the Gemara brings, is thunder, right? Which we just had, I think, was it last month's Shabbos, because I remember talking about it in the morning shir. Thunder, the Gemara says, is there in order lahafshit akmimios shebeleva adam, to shake the akmimius, the closedness, the stuckness of a person's heart, because it's a different thing. All of a sudden, a person's laying in bed and they hear like we heard last month's Shabbos, this gigantic explosion, and it reminds a person just, whoa, there's something that's beyond me. There's something that's beyond me. Now that's a yirah chitzonis, because the first minute, like we said, you think you're being bombed or whatever it is, and a person gets afraid, mamish afraid, because all of a sudden our fragility is exposed, and all the layers are stripped away, and we realize that this is not so simple to be a human being in this world. We've created very secure systems of comfort, but it's an illusion, like the most unbelievable illusion. I don't want to say too much. Al tiftach palasatam, but the people in Ukraine thought they were very safe until, they're going through the blitz right now, essentially. The people in Eretz Yisrael thought that they were, etc., etc. So things are not what they seem. Life is real. Life is real. Life is serious. It's a serious joke. it's a very, it's a joke, but it's mamish serious. But it's a joke, but it's serious. So from that standpoint, a person feels yira. It's mafshet hakmimi shebeleva adam, and that's a huge chesed from Hashem, because a person helps a person wake up to realize, gewalt, there's Hashem in the world. Gewalt, I don't want to waste my life. Mamish, it's real. That's Hashem's chesed. So the kasher yeda adam shezeh chazdi is baruch la'oyroi. When a person recognizes this is chesed from Hashem, it's not gevura from Hashem. Ki gavar aleinu, what we experience as gevura, gewalt is chazdai. So then nasam yira ava, that flips the emotion, and the fear that we felt. Immediately, if we're able to remind ourselves that the only reason that I'm in a situation that I'm feeling fear is because the Infinite One loves me so infinitely that He sent me this yira to wake me up, gewalt. So all of a sudden our whole energy changes. Shemekable ba'ava. So we recognize it's a kiss from Hashem. It's a love letter. V'nifter miyir chitzaynis, and then the whole yira is completely dissolved, and a person sits shaking, from the thunder that's shaking him up, and a person's like, wow, how beautiful is this? I'm really not in control, but I'm in Hashem's hands. And that's called, in the Baal Shem Tov, halas hamidas. That's called taking a midah and elevating it to its source, where it becomes sweetened, and a person lives with yishuv hadas. This is called emunah. This is called higher level consciousness, because a person's going to experience anxieties in life. And the Baal Shem Tov is giving us a straight path to understand al pi pnimius what this experience actually is, what it's there for, what its motivation is, and that changes the whole dynamic. Let's just go quickly to the end of the piece. Because any yira chitzainis, any fear that a person feels that's disjointed, disconnected from his spiritual life, is rooted in Yira Pnimis, which is Yiras Habayri Yisbarach, right? Which is not a debilitating fear like we're afraid Hashem's going to punish me. It's this awesome realization that there's so much more to life than meets the eye, and that I'm in Hashem's hands. Adarabba, He loves me, and He is everything. But again, a person experiences a Yira Chitzainis, but it's there to wake a person up to a deeper experience of Yira, and that is Chesed Hashem. Yad Yeminoi. It's Hashem's right hand, Kiviyachol. Pshuta v'shoyel u'mevakish mi'a'adam. Hashem is sending a letter to your mailbox. Hashem is called Doidi Doifek. It's Hashem knocking on the door, and He's inviting us. She is He said, please wake up from this because I love you, not because I'm trying to make you afraid. It's because I'm desperate for a relationship with you. I'm here to wake you up. But not in a heavy way. That's the thing. A lot of times, Hashem's waking us up. No, that's like, oh my gosh, He's waking us up because you're next. That's not it. Hashem is waking you up like a mother whispers into the ear of her child to wake him up because they were going to have breakfast together. Like it's a different kind of waking up. It's like a wake-up call because it's like what they call the Israeli military, like they send non-lethal munitions to knock on the thing of the building, telling everybody to leave before they destroy the building. That's not what it is. It's very calm. It's very urgent, but it's calm. And that's the Baal Shem Tov. You know what I'm saying? It's a very different thing than the fire and brimstone heavy. Kadosh Baruch Hu is sending a person to wake up because he's shoyl umavakish mi adam. Please, she'yisahar mizeh. Wake up! It's time to go get some bagels, and hang out together for our weekly date. Kiviyachol. Mizel yiras Hashem. V'zesh kasav ma Hashem shoyl mi imach ki im li yiras Hashem. Anytime that Hashem asks something of a person, by sending these two knocks on the roof of the building, so to speak, is Ki'im Liyiras Hashem. Hashem's trying to wake us up with a thunder, Shu Yira Pnimis, to recognize that we're here on a mission, and that we're here in a shlichus. The second person recognizes Gevalt Hashem loves me so much, He sent me Yira to wake me up, a Yira Pnimis, as Nasam Yira Ava. So then the Yira goes away, because all of a sudden everything flipped, and the emotion that I'm supposed to be feeling now is actually not Yira. What I should be feeling now is great, overwhelming love, because everything's in control. Because what am I so afraid of? That I'm going to lose my own personal well-being? My personal well-being is only here so that I can serve as a shliach, as a messenger for Him. We're in this together. There's more to life, again, than my own considerations. That a person accepts it, and a person so grateful for this, again, thunder, but it can mean anything in a person's life. And then guess what happens? The fear goes away. The fear goes away. Says the Baal Shem, it has to be authentic. Right? And this is another very important thing that you find all the time in the Baal Shem. That has to be authentic. You can't school the system by okay, I'm afraid of this thing, and now I want to get rid of that fear, so now I'm going to have a whole pilpul. That doesn't work, because you're still objectifying the Yira Chitzainis as if it's something real that now you need a strategy to get away from. The Baal Shem Tov says, no, a person needs to get to a madriga where they realize that this is not even a thing. It's not even worth being afraid of at all. It's nothing. It's an illusion. And with this we'll explain what the Gemara comments on that pasuk. Ma Shem Shoel Mi Imach Ki Im Liyira, says the Gemara. Ki Im Liyira, it's such a small thing to have Yira Shemaim. Says the Gemara yeah, it is. Because Legabi Moshe Milsa Zitra Sahi, which Al Pi Pshat means that for Moshe Rabbeinu it was a small thing, but Al Pi the Baal Shem, which also we mentioned in Shiurim in the past, Legabi Moshe, when a person experiences Yira Chitzainis of a Moshe Rabbeinu, of a Talmud Chacham, of a Tzaddik, and a person feels, you walk into the presence of another person and you get the sense that, well, actually this is not just another person, this is mashu acher, and there's a yira, but again, you're not afraid of the tzaddik, but there's an awe, there's an honor, we walk into Rav Chaim Kanievsky, you know what I'm saying? Zatzal, it's all of us, I think most of us had this experience, it's a mashu acher, it's not just an old man, this is something else. So legabi Moshe, then a person's able to get to Yira Pnimis. Milsa Zutra Sahi, Mi Yiras Talmud Chacham, Hu Benaka Lava Liyiras Hashem. She was able to take these ideas into the fresh new week, and we should not need any Yira Chitzainis, but if we should encounter it, should be able to be mamtik it, bring it up to Yira Pnimis. We should have the laughter of Yitzchak to turn the Ketz Chai into Moichin de Gadlus, And when we come into davening, it should be Beis Psachim with Yira and Ava, Yesod, and Malchus. Be'ezus Hashem Yisrael. Thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful week.